I built an old school bus into a tricked out RV that was so cool, and we traveled for about 5 months. Part of me wanted to just say, this is how I want to live from now on. I want to just sell it all and get rid of all my belongings and be a nomad. And what I actually did was buy another company and get bigger.
I was just going to say.
Hello and welcome to The Hurdle,
A podcast by the makers of LivePlan,
where we talk with everyday entrepreneurs about the hurdles they faced and the lessons they've learned starting and running their businesses.
I'm Max.
I'm Jade.
Let's dive in.
Let's go.
Give some.
Welcome back to season 2 of The Hurdle. Today we have Seth San Filippo with us, and we just are going to jump right into it. So you allegedly got kicked out of a community college for trying to use class time to start a custom longboard business.
That's true.
All right. So give us a scoop with that, because that's kind of crazy.
Technically, I was asked not to come back.
Okay.
Which is very different.
And being kicked out?
Totally. It's not on my permanent record.
Okay, cool.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I was starting a small woodworking business, building skateboards, and I didn't have a shop of my own. I think I might have also got asked not to use a router in my apartment either. Oh
my gosh!
That got me to the community college wood shop, and they don't really like you to use it as a business.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and then weren't you saying like you were asked to be making specific items, and you like kind of were like,
yeah.
You're like, no, this is a shelf.
Yeah.
This isn't another skateboard.
This is an ironing board.
Yeah.
This is something else.
Right.
and they all look like skateboards.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah. It didn't last long.
Yeah. That's funny.
All right. So, but you were building custom skateboards. And when did you start this?
I started that when I was 19 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. Back in the dark ages.
Okay. And how'd you get into that?
I just got into it because I like to build things, and I was interested in trying it out. I wanted to try skateboarding. I didn't really grow up skateboarding, but I thought it would be something cool. And yeah, my brother and I kind of each made one, and then made one for a friend. And everywhere we went, people would ask us about them. And so we started trying to sell them.
Yeah. Okay.
Were you also kicked out of Saturday Market too?
Oh.
Sort of. Yeah.
Not to throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
You're a problem entrepreneur.
Yeah. I was figuring it out. But
Yeah.
We thought it'd be cool to walk around the Saturday market. And I think we printed out a sheet of paper and taped them to our boards that we're just walking around with. It said for sale or ask us about this. And they didn't appreciate that either. I mean, they asked me not to do that, but they also asked me if I'd be interested in getting a booth, which I did. And they were super happy to have me, and it was really fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's really neat.
Yeah. I live not far from there. So it's like a total like bachelor pad type move. Like we pulled our junky old couch out of our apartment and carried it down to the Saturday market and put it in the booth.
Oh my gosh.
So it was pretty funny, like walking right through the neighborhood with this old couch and setting it up in the market. But everybody loved it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then you also like built a website back in the old dark ages too?
Yeah. Shortly after, had some help building a website, and that really helped launch the product to places out of the area.
Rad.
So the Saturday market was cool, and I got in some local shops. But with the website, I was able to sell them all over the country and the world, really. Ship them overseas.
How old were you at this point?
I was 19.
You were 19, and
19
it was
and
like
20.
the early 2000s or earlier?
Yeah, it was around 2000.
Okay.
That's when I moved here and started doing that. Yeah.
And as a 19-year-old, early 2000s, the internet is in a very different place than it is today. How did you think like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to start selling these skateboards on the internet? Like, I don't know that I would have even thought.
Well, it's obvious now, but back then,
now
absolutely
it's so
not.
obvious.
Yeah. It wasn't obvious to me either, but it was recommended by somebody that knew somebody that's like, this guy can build a website and he knows how to do it. And
the one guy in town.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, go for it.
Yeah. It was awesome. And I didn't know how that would work, but it was great. I had really good visibility, and people were finding me that way, and I was communicating and all over, with people all over the country. Wow. It was cool.
And
I was going to say, this wasn't your full-time job though, right? This was like a weekend.
This was always kind of a side hustle.
Okay.
Yeah. The full-time job, I was doing computer-aided drafting, like AutoCAD.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was this was also cutting edge at the time. I was working remotely back then.
Whoa.
Okay.
So I was working for a company in the San Francisco Bay Area, but living here. And it was pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rad. So you're working AutoCAD, you're doing this like nights and weekends skateboard business. And then at some point you decide I'm going to try something new with wood. Can you talk us through?
Sure. Yeah. One thing leads to another. I think like a lot of other businesses,
Yeah,
it kind of,
totally.
you don't see it coming. But as I was building skateboards and looking for good wood all the time for them, I started noticing these city trees that were being taken down and not being utilized. And at the same time, with one of my coworkers from the day job, who was a woodworker, he found out that I was doing this stuff and he had a passion for wood and a hobby for wood.
Okay.
And so him and I started gathering and just really crudely cutting up some of these local trees that were coming down in town with a chainsaw.
Okay.
And he would take some for his projects. I'd take some for my boards. And that kind of started a whole new path.
Is that like a conversation you have with like someone like felling a tree? Like how do you even start that conversation with the city? It's like you don't go up to the city office and go, hey,
No.
any wood?
No, I was literally driving down the street one day and I saw a crew working on finishing up a tree that they had just taken down.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the city actually contracts out their removals. And as part of that contract, at least back then, the contractor kind of had the rights to the wood and could do what they would wish with it.
Okay.
And I was just learning that talking to these guys. I just literally stopped
like,
and jumped out of the car. And yeah. And so they said, yeah, we can give this to you. We'd love to see it get put to use. If you can take it away quickly and efficiently, it actually saves us a bunch of time and money.
Totally.
And so that was kind of the start of that.
Okay.
And it was also kind of a light bulb moment thinking, wow, there's this stuff out there that's not being utilized.
Okay. So what happened from there?
So what happened from there is we started trying to like winch these big trees onto a trailer.
Okay.
And it was
and you have the big trailer, or
my
your
friend did.
Friend had a big trailer.
Yeah, my friend did. The guy that was my coworker.
Okay.
He had a trailer and he had been doing it a little bit more kind of before I came along, just on a real hobby level. But it turned out to be a real challenge because it was tricky and it was hard and it was heavy and it was hard to get the trailer in.
Yeah.
And pretty soon the tree guys were like, yeah, if we're going to have to help you with this, or it's going to take too much time, it's almost not worth it. They just needed to get on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So it didn't take long before I bought a crane truck.
Okay.
Which
is a huge investment.
It was a huge investment, and it's just a physically huge thing.
Right.
I lived in a cul-de-sac and I had a crane truck in my driveway. Along with starting to get decks of logs and cut lumber.
And you're in your early 20s at this point?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm in my early 20s. Yeah, this is fast forward a few years, but early 20s.
So you have all these pieces of wood in your driveway and your yard, the big crane truck, and you're thinking, well, you might need a spot for all of this.
Yeah, I got to a point where I was like, I either need to just quit doing this because it's getting out of control and I have enough for probably like a lifetime's worth of skateboards, or I need to take it to another level and make a real business out of it.
Okay.
And that's what kind of got me thinking about how feasible that would be and what the next steps would be to do that.
Okay. And so then what happened next?
So then just started doing research, market research, both for the supply and the demand side. I wrote a business plan, talked to some investors, looking at property,
Because what was the idea? What were you going to do with the wood?
The idea was to do it full time and to sell the wood.
Just sell it.
Yeah, just sell the wood, because that's kind of what I had started doing with my surplus wood that I had in the driveway.
Oh, so you weren't just doing skateboards anymore.
I had so much wood. I had way more than I needed for skateboards.
Okay.
A skateboard obviously doesn't take a lot of wood.
Right.
Just one little plank.
Right.
Yeah, totally. So you're like, so you were going to sell wood?
A little bit, yeah, because people had started hearing that this guy's got all this wood, and I was selling a little bit here and there to other woodworkers. And so, yeah, that was the idea, to collect more of this stuff, because there was, as we went, there was more and more people that wanted to give it to us or, saw the good use of it. And then, I thought there would be a market for it.
So you're still doing your AutoCAD job?
Still doing AutoCAD.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But along the line, and it was a good job and it was flexible and I got paid well.
Yeah.
It wasn't feeding my soul. It wasn't totally what I want to do. I'd be sitting at a desk all day looking at a computer.
Yeah.
I'd find myself just so exhausted at the end of the day, not physically, but just mentally and my eyes. And I felt like, while it was a good job, it probably wasn't my true calling in life.
Yeah.
And, wasn't what I wanted to do forever.
Okay. So you're working the job, you're starting this business selling wood. And then what happened next?
So I went for it. I took a plunge. I had bought a house by then and I refinanced it. And I used that money to buy a really small, pretty rundown commercial building.
Because you're going to go full-time selling wood.
I was going to go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
I felt like I needed to try it and I needed to go for it again or quit altogether.
Yeah. Get it out of the driveway. Yeah. Stop pissing off the neighbors.
Yeah. And while doing the business plan, I was thinking about all these giant moves, big property, big equipment, investors, trying to go huge. And the more that I looked into it, the more that I kind of did the research and thought about how and if that was going to work, I started thinking, that might not really be feasible. I mean, it's hard to start a new business and could start in a bunch of debt, and that would just kind of maybe hinder me moving forward. So I literally, there was a little tiny like mom and pop specialty wood store that I would go to sometimes to look for wood or to have some like millwork services done. And I was thinking, I was like, I wonder if I could make a place like that work. It was really small, tiny, and it was just one guy that worked there. And I thought, that might, something like that could work. And I went there like a week or two later and it was for sale.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden my wheels started turning and I thought, this is actually something that's doable. So that's when I refinanced the house and I ended up buying that property. And I took over. I didn't buy the business technically, but I bought some of the inventory they had. And really they'd been there for 30 years. They'd been there since 1976. So I put in my wood that was local and salvaged and changed the name, but I had 30 years worth of customers that still knew the place, that were still showing up. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but I think that's what ultimately kept me in business.
Totally.
Because if I were a block away somewhere else, I think it would have floundered.
If you were taking over like a coffee business and people were coming for
people
coffee.
Just didn't know.
They already knew. They were already coming to that location for something. Maybe not exactly like what you were selling. But it was a little different, but it was a kind of a seamless transition.
That answers the question of like, you have the supply, like it sounds like more than enough, right? But the demand part, like you were doing some research beforehand. That like answers the question of like starting from scratch versus having like a book of business already. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And that, like I said, helped me realize that there's a lot to a location, whether it's an existing location or just the traffic it gets when you're thinking about a brick and mortar type retail store. It really makes a big difference.
And it's already kind of proved itself out a little bit over the, that makes a lot of sense. Because my initial question was why buy and not just lease? Because it sounds like you were very sensitive to like being in a lot of debt, right?
Yeah. And I looked at leasing and I looked at a lot of options, but this place came up and it was really small and really run down, and it was exactly what I could afford. And I actually had to get really creative with the family that had owned it. They'd owned it forever. And so I wrote them a letter with my offer to have them work with me to kind of like carry the contract for a few years. And it all worked out. Yeah, it worked out. And it kind of kept the legacy going a little bit with the place as a wood store.
Oh, that's really neat.
Awesome.
So you're 25 doing this?
Yeah, I was 25.
Okay.
I was 25 when I opened the doors there.
Okay. And then we're going to get to the punchline here. At some point, you go from selling wood to selling gorgeous custom furniture. If you're watching this episode right now, you might notice the coffee table in front of us. It's one of Seth's pieces.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I loved wood, but I loved building things with wood, from skateboards to whatever. I was building some small projects for myself. That same year I opened was the same year that my first child was born. And so while I was in the shop, in between customers, I was building him a crib before he was born.
Oh my gosh.
Which was awesome. Yeah, it was great. It was still one of my favorite projects ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always wanted to know more about building, and I wanted to build more. And that was kind of a goal of mine as I went. It was good to sell wood, but it was nice to build things too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at some point, that was kind of another big step for me. I decided I want to focus more time and space and attention on kind of moving myself up the food chain, as I like to say, from the raw wood to the finished product.
And that wasn't like a decision that you just went from supplying wood and then the next day you're no longer supplying wood and you're building. Like did it take time to make that transition?
Yeah, it all takes time. And I think when you're a small business and you're just trying to do what you can do to survive, you have to do things incrementally sometimes, and you have to kind of test the waters as you go.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out that there was like a demand for custom furniture? Especially at like, I mean, these are beautiful pieces. The price point isn't like, you know, what you would pick up at like Home Depot or, you know, one of your big box stores.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that made me feel like it was feasible is the fact that we have really nice wood here. And it's not like that in a lot of other places.
Right.
And I always like to say that I like to let the wood do the talking. I think the designs can be simple, but if you kind of honor the shape and the color and the story of the wood, that goes a long ways. And it's timeless. I think solid wood and stone and steel and concrete and glass, like those are elements that I think, you know, trends come and go, but I think the materials are timeless.
Okay. So you just had like this intuition feeling that like you thought it was going to work, that you thought, like, were there other companies in the area selling similar products that you thought, oh, I could probably do that too? Or
yeah, there was a few, but again, I had the sourcing of the material, and I had shipped a bunch of lumber to a furniture manufacturer on the East Coast that was a really high-end manufacturer building big, fancy, expensive tables for celebrities with a beautiful showroom and basically a concierge and a tuxedo showing people this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
That is wild.
Right? A tuxedo.
I know this because I snuck into the place one time when I was there. I totally got lucky.
Okay, wait. So you went to New York to this place where they show people custom furniture. Yeah. And they have like a butler there that escorts you around in a tuxedo.
Yeah, super high end. Like, in a very nondescript building in Manhattan, like no signage from the ground floor. You couldn't tell that there was anything. The showroom was up on an upper floor.
Okay. It's like a wood speakeasy or something.
Totally.
Yeah. Wow.
And I knew it was there. I knew the address, but it was exclusive again. It was all locked up. And I happened to I just thought I'd go see what would happen or what it would look like, or if I could get in. And as I was standing outside the building, somebody walked out and I went in the open door.
Oh my gosh, you snuck in.
And I got in the elevator and popped out in this showroom to this, like butler type person.
Wow.
And he's just like, what are you doing here? How'd you get in here? What do you want?
What movie are you in? What kind of celebrity?
Yeah. But I had previously sold wood to this company.
Okay.
And, I realized as I was shipping this stuff off and I was getting paid a certain amount for the raw slabs, knowing what they get for the finished product, I thought, I'm at the bottom of the food chain here, except I'm the one with the goods.
Well, and that's a huge accept. It's it's not an accept, right? It's like,
that's the secret sauce.
Literally you had the secret sauce.
Yeah. So I thought that, the things that they had the showroom and they had the tooling and the customer list. I felt like those are all things I could work towards acquiring, but they couldn't necessarily just manifest these beautiful big trees that I was salvaging out in Oregon.
Right.
They had to come to people like me.
Yeah.
And so I thought, it'd be great if I could move myself up the food chain a bit. And I've been working towards that ever since. Okay. So that was kind of an epiphany moment that helped me move the business that direction. Okay.
And so your business is called Urban Lumber Company.
That's right.
Right. And you've been in business for how many years?
It's been 19 years since I started officially. Okay. I kind of did it on the side like that, for a year or two before with the friend and with the skateboards and a few things. But it's called Urban Lumber Company. We salvage urban trees. So trees from in town around the urban forest.
Okay. What's the business model?
The business model is that we get down trees, trees that come out if they're dead or hazardous or come down in storms. We haul the logs in raw form. We mill them up.
So you have a full-on tree service. This isn't just making the furniture from the trees that the city acquires.
Yeah, we have a tree service, and then we have sawmills and dry kilns and all of the material handling equipment to take it from trees to logs to lumber to finished furniture. And then we have showrooms as well. And along with Urban Lumber, I bought one of my largest competitors about 4.5 years ago up in Seattle, Washington, called Urban Hardwoods. So we operate the two shops, and the business model is essentially the same.
Okay.
I mean, there's like 3 or 4 own businesses. Like you could have just stopped at just getting the wood. And then that's one business. And then you're selling the wood. That's another business.
Right.
Now you're making stuff out of the wood. I mean, it's like, it's kind of interesting to see your path. It's like each one of those could have just been fine if you did it, but you continued, you saw the opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, like, how did you decide on what to make with the wood, right? Like, was it just tables initially, or like how do you know what would sell and kind of what you were good at?
Yeah. Again, I learned as I went, and I love to take a look at a piece of wood and think about what it should be. Like this table in front of us was a really cool, odd piece. And I thought it would be an awesome, cool kind of mid-century coffee table. So, I mean, I could have cut it up and glued it back together and made it into something else, but I like to kind of let the wood dictate what it's going to be, if possible.
Okay.
That's really
so
cool.
You really, it's more about like you let the piece of material speak to you and kind of guide the way. And then you were just paying attention to what was selling and what wasn't. And then also kind of letting that guide future.
Yeah. And we still do. The trends change and styles change.
Okay.
But yeah. Ideally, we're not trying to force it into be something it's not best suited for. It's a natural product, and it took years to grow, and that's what gives it a lot of the character and the beauty. So we try to accentuate that.
Okay. So talk to us about, you're managing a lot, and you've managed a lot for a long time, and you've learned a lot, I'm sure, from like, running all of these companies or parts of the different companies. So talk to us about like, how did your first hire and growing a team? Yeah. Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. I have learned a lot, and it's come a long ways, and it's fun to think back about sneaking into places or getting kicked out of places or hauling your couch down to a booth versus, to where I'm at now over the course of about 19 or 20 years. So it has come a long ways, and employees are a huge part of that. I hired my first employee basically when my son was born, so I could take a break and be in the hospital and take some family time for a little bit. And he was a retired guy that had a passion for wood and was just helping out part-time. And from there, I kind of learned that, especially as I got busier, I needed more people. I couldn't do it all. And I needed to also take care of some of my personal time, because I was running the shop during the week and going after wood and trees on the weekends and the nights. And it was
a lot to manage.
But yeah, I love hiring good people. And one of my favorite parts of the job is the people I work with and the people I get to surround myself with, which is my choice, which is pretty cool. And I've always felt that you can teach a good person something, if they've got a good work ethic and willingness to learn and a good attitude, like that's so much more important to me, usually than just like pure skill set.
Okay. Okay.
I was going to say, like, advice for other entrepreneurs, or because we hear this all the time, it's really hard to find good people.
It is.
And what you just mentioned, you can't really get that from like a 5-10 minute conversation with someone. Like, so how did you find the good people for your business?
I was joking the other day, like my typical interview questions at this point are so far removed from actually what we do. I want to know more about like your relationship with your dad, or
that's awesome.
So,
or what your hobbies are. What kind of music do you listen to? Like,
and what are you listening for, or what are you paying attention to?
Just a similarity and just like values and how you get enjoyment out of life. And again, it's like a family. I mean, it's almost like going on a date with somebody or something, but we spend a lot of time together. We often spend more time together at work than we get to at home. So it's important to be with good people.
Yeah.
It's like, do I like spending time with this person?
Yeah. And it's hard work, and it's my baby, and it's my identity, and it's part of our culture. So it really matters to me to have good folks there and be around them.
So there's the hiring part, but then this is something you mentioned when we met earlier. What I love, it's like they're not just jobs. Like, these people have careers at your place, and that's really hard to do for a small business.
Yeah.
How did you get to a place where you could like provide that level of stability and financial security for folks? Yeah,
it's taken a while. It's taken a lot of work to get to that place, and it wasn't always that way. The longer we've been around, and the more work we have, the more we can pay, and the bigger team I have, the more opportunity I can provide as far as like health benefits and paid time off and investment plans and things like that. So really proud that it's become a good place to work and a place where people do want to make a career out of it. And it's not just a summer job
Okay.
Yeah. And people love wood. I mean, everybody that works for me, whether they're a woodworker or not, love what we do and are passionate about it, passionate about sustainability. So that really helps too. It's a labor of love for everybody.
That's awesome.
Really awesome.
Yeah. And so not only do you get to choose who you work with internally, you also kind of get to choose who your customers are, right? And I think you mentioned this big order coming in, and it was a game changer for you. But eventually you kind of mentioned not really the kind of partnership that you wanted, and you got to kind of feel it out and didn't really like it. Like, can you talk through that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do. I mean, I'm not that established to be saying no to much.
Right.
Especially at that point.
Right. Yeah. This was during COVID and the pandemic, and it was a really touch and go time for business, and got the opportunity to build a product line, a furniture line for a designer. And it really helped us a ton, and it helped me acquire the company in Seattle, and it helped me
I want to talk more about in a minute.
We can get back to that, but helped me keep people employed. It helped, it just was awesome for a lot of reasons, but it also was a really challenging relationship, and it was hard to get away from kind of our core values of a company and what we were doing and who we had to bring on. And it got to a point where I kind of determined it wasn't quite worth it. And that was a hard decision.
Yeah.
But I think it was the right decision.
So did you fulfill the order?
Yeah, we fulfilled the orders.
Okay.
We chose not to take on new orders at some point.
Okay. So talk to us about these. Like you said, this happened around the same time that you had the opportunity to buy the Seattle company. But that story's a little bit interesting. And you were also in a bit of a interesting, difficult time in your own life. Could you talk to us about?
Sure. Yeah, it was 2020, the start of 2020, as we all know, it turned out to be a crazy year. There was highs and lows.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just lost an opportunity to do a local hospitality project that was going to be one of our biggest to date. And as things were shutting down and my employees were concerned, we furloughed people. At the same time, I was going through a divorce, which was hard, obviously, and just wasn't sure what the future was going to hold. It was pretty scary all around.
Yeah.
Life, just like as it was for many people, it was just all shooken up.
Yeah.
All at once. Each one of those individually is scary.
Yeah.
Like all happen at once.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the year, I really pared down, and I just had a couple people helping me in the shop. We were down to just 3 people total, and everybody else furloughed, trying to just make it happen. And still
3 from 10, right?
Yeah. Or more. Yeah. Around 10.
Okay.
Yeah. So still kind of hustling and trying to find work, and got this opportunity for this designer within that time. And as we built a few prototypes, and that was looking like it was going to be a real order. It was around the same time that I was approached by a business broker about buying the business in Seattle.
Okay.
And at first it seemed totally crazy. Like, there's no way I can do anything like that. But it really piqued my curiosity, and I'd always admired this company. They started around the same time I did. We were doing a similar thing.
Custom wood furniture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They had a really great reputation, and I knew they had a lot of great things going. And so I was curious more than anything to just get an inside look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, as in get more information?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like how they run things. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they thought I might be a prospective buyer. I didn't really think I was, but I thought, well, if you're willing to show me around, I'll take a trip up there and check it out.
Okay.
But it didn't take long or too many trips to realize that there was a lot of great opportunity, and the people there were awesome. And a lot of it was a good fit for me, and it's what I knew. It's what I've been doing for years. And I felt like I could be the guy to do this. Okay. And at the same time, the order was coming through from this designer, and we were going to need to scale up in one way or another with people and space and tooling to fulfill.
Because you didn't have what you needed in terms of resources in Eugene. Right.
It was just, it was a huge order.
Okay.
And the timelines were pretty quick. And up in Seattle, they had been real slow, and they were also kind of laid off or furloughed and pared down. And it was pretty awesome to take on the company and basically put everybody back to work on day one.
Wow.
Take this order on, split it between 2 shops. Both shops were back working. And
oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
So, but like, how did you know that this was like financially a good decision for you to take on this company? Like,
Was it the order? I mean, like without that order, it would probably be a little more difficult or.
Yeah. But again, like getting to know the people and looking at their books and looking at their inventory. And it was my language. It's stuff I understand.
And you knew the market a little bit up in Seattle, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I know that Seattle is a bigger market that we have. And again, like I was also just not in a place to make a really risky financial decision. And it was an interesting conversation with the previous owner because just very frank about it. Like I have no need or ability to lose a bunch of money or buy a failing company.
Okay. Right. This is what you're telling him.
Yeah. But I think that I could do it. And I think, I think this is an institution in Seattle. It's been here a long time. He cared about his people too. And I think that I could be the guy to do this. And here's what I have to offer. And it's not even anywhere remotely close to what you are asking or potentially even what it's really worth. And they took it.
Wow.
And I think in a way, like the pandemic and all that kind of worked to my advantage in that case. It was a tough year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were in a tough spot. And I was like, I mean, no disrespect. And this is just what I can do.
Right.
I can't do more. Right. And that's partially how I made that decision. I thought if I could get it for this, then I can make it work.
Okay.
And if not, that's okay too. I'll figure it out. So
jumping to the punchline, how did it go? You still have it.
Still have it. Yeah. It's been 4.5 years and it's hard. It's hard to be in two places and it's hard to double the size of your organization overnight. It's hard to integrate company cultures.
So they're integrated, the two businesses.
Yeah, basically. They run kind of separately and we still have separate names, but I have a lot of people that cross over that do work. Yeah, including myself. And
that's an interesting business model, right? Some people would keep them separate. There's some overlap.
Yeah, there's both. Yeah, there's both. And trying to figure out the correct balance.
Right.
And trying to kind of prove myself as an owner and a leader to a new crew that just went through a tough time and a tough transition.
Yeah.
Took a while.
Didn't you say you felt like the awkward stepdad showing
up? I love that.
I did a little
hey guys.
Bit. Yeah.
Hope you like me.
Yeah.
Because I'm here now.
Yeah. Again, you don't want to overdo it.
Right. Totally.
But you just have to be calm and just lead by example, I guess. And I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of turmoil and a little bit of turnover in the beginning, some attrition kind of, but for the most part, the crew's been really solid and a lot of the people that have been there forever stayed on. And I feel like we've gotten through a lot of that.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Is there anything that was particularly challenging with that process?
Yeah. I mean,
just everything.
It's challenging. Yeah. It was challenging.
Yeah.
It's just a different company culture. And I think there was a little bit of a lack of trust with ownership, just given the way it was structured before. It's always kind of like us versus them, us being like the people working in the shop and them being the ownership because they were a little more hands off.
Okay.
It was more of an investment.
Okay.
And the way I've always done it here, I mean, I started it here. I've done every job. I'm in the shop. Everybody works really hard for me, but I also say I never ask people to do something I won't do. The challenge is I'll do anything.
You wear a lot of hats.
Yeah. And so it was just kind of separate company cultures in that regard and trying to get up there and work shoulder to shoulder with those guys and kind of prove myself and prove my system and, that was one of the bigger challenges.
Okay. And it's evolved to some degree over time.
Yeah. And it didn't take too long really. There was one funny story. I happened to be up there at one of my first visits. We were kind of trying to pare down and figure out the equipment. And I was in the sawmill yard with the sawyer, who's the person that runs the sawmills, cuts the wood. And there was an old forklift that we were trying to get going. It was from the 70s. It hadn't run in years. It had been parked in the corner of this yard. And I said, well, let's see if we can get that running. And I have an old junky forklift here that's very similar. So I know it well. And I had the tools in my truck, and with what we had, him and I were actually able to get this thing running and started. And as it started, it first coughed and it blew out all this rusty water that had been down in the exhaust pipe, and we just got covered with this nasty, but we were high-fiving.
Yeah,
it was like, that was awesome.
Yeah, totally.
And, I was kind of being devil's advocate, but I said, I bet the old owner never
I was just going to say that.
had rusty exhaust water on him, right?
Yeah.
I said, no, he never even showed up.
Yeah.
Like
You're proven.
Yeah, he didn't know anything about this type of equipment. That just wasn't it was just a different relationship.
Yeah, you lead by example.
So that's how you form some of these bonds.
Yeah. That's really cool.
That's amazing.
So you acquired the Seattle business, and now you're making more money. But I think in our last conversation, we talked about how mo money, mo problems, right? In this concept. Yeah. Talk to us about because you could just keep acquiring companies if you wanted to, or you could just take on bigger and bigger and bigger orders. Mm-hmm. But then why don't you?
Well, I see the value in being small and simple too. And starting by myself, it had its own challenges, just surviving. And then being big has its own challenges. And I think there's a happy place somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. But I also, I've been doing it a long time and I'm proud of it, but I'm kind of ready for another phase in life. And I don't have the appetite or the drive that I think I did when I was in my 20s and early 30s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so, at this point, I'm trying to figure out how to take myself out of the equation a little bit, get a little less rusty exhaust water on myself.
Okay.
And put good people in place and, have a different role.
Okay. So you've been super hands-on, leading by example for 19 years. Yeah. And your identity has very much been you're the guy that runs these companies, right?
Gets your hand dirty. Yeah.
And so now you want to shift that identity and be less involved in day-to-day operations.
Yeah, I'm trying. Okay. And that has its own challenges.
I was just going to ask you, that kind of goes against everything you've done.
Almost every entrepreneur we talk to who's in the early stages of running their business is I do this more hours than I want to admit. Mm-hmm. It consumes them, right? How do you get to a point where, and I want to go back a little bit in time if we can.
Sure.
There was a point a few years ago or several years ago where you were actually able to go travel for 5 months with your family.
Yeah.
In an RV in Mexico or something like that.
For sure.
How, as a business owner, did you manage that?
Right.
Well, it's kind of like trying to step back now or taking a vacation or getting hands off a little bit comes with a cost too. Whether it's a financial cost because you have to pay people to do the work you're doing. I was talking to a friend recently who just made a big transition, and she was saying how realistically they're going to need to hire 3 or 4 people to replace her because she was doing so much. So there's a cost there, and it's a challenge. Things just don't always exactly go maybe exactly how I would want them to, or
when you step away.
When I step away.
Just be more concrete. When you step away, the folks that are working in the office that are on your team, things maybe slip through the cracks because. Yeah. Or I have to pay people to do it. And so there's there's an actual financial cost there. Right. But there's a cost to me and my health and my family to not do it. And that's kind of where I was at then. It was pre-divorce. And so I was trying to reconnect as a family and, been going hard for a long time and it affects everybody. Yeah. So I was just to a point where I was pretty burned out and I just felt really strongly that it was a good time and a good opportunity. My kids were of a great age to just go and take a little break. Yeah. Called it my radical sabbatical.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty cool. Yeah, I built an old school bus into a tricked out RV that was so cool, and we traveled for about 5 months. Rad. Half of that was down in Mexico, and just kind of missed a whole winter, which was great, and slowed way down. Yeah. And just kept things simple, and from the way we ate and slept and talked and played and traveled, it was just getting back to basics, and it was really nice. And so. But it did have an impact on the business while you were gone. Yeah. To some degree. Yeah. Right? I was asking a lot of the people that I left behind to keep things going while I was off resting and playing. Right. And that was hard.
And so how has that experience helped inform what you've done since then? Because now you're in a position where you're looking to be less involved, but then you also have to manage the cost of that, the impact of that on the business.
Yeah, that's another kind of business move decision I decided to make at some point after that trip. Because part of me wanted to just say, this is how I want to live from now on. I want to just sell it all and get rid of all my belongings and be a nomad. And what I actually did was buy another company and get bigger.
I was just going to say.
But really what I realized is it's up to me to build a life where I can do both. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I don't have to just disappear, and I don't have to just go as hard as I can with businesses and take on every single thing. And so that's what I've been really working towards over the last few years. And the last year in particular, I hired a really great shop foreman here locally, and I have some great people in Seattle. And I've been trying to empower and put people in place to, you know, kind of keep things going while I can both step away a little bit within the business and on some more extended trips and travel.
Okay.
Because we had talked about once you know it's out there, it's kind of hard to stop thinking about it.
Right.
So it's that sweet spot, and that's something you learned over time. Like if you're going to give advice to another entrepreneur who's, you know, maybe too involved in their business, like what would you say to them? It seems like it took you a while to figure out what your sweet spot, or your sweet spot was changing, right?
Yeah.
Is that just a gut check kind of conversation you have with yourself, like every week, every month? Like,
yeah, I mean, you have to. It's easy not to. You get caught up in your day to day. I mean, I think we all do, but I think it's really important to just, continue to ask yourself what your end goal is.
Yeah.
And, you know, life is short, and why are we here?
Right.
All those existential questions. But yeah, I also have said many times, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so you have to recharge. And I mean, if you want to come back and be a good leader, a business person or parent or whatever, like you have to continue to work at taking care of yourself and getting away. And it's hard. I mean, you have to do what you have to do, especially in the early days. You just, there's no option, but
I think it's abundantly clear for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a cost of them leaving their company. But I don't think they think of it the other way, where there's a cost to not do that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I guess some of the advice I'd have is to maybe think about that from the start. Like, don't just create yourself a job, but just think about how you can use this to create yourself a life. Kind of like I said, like a life that you can choose to do both.
Pause. Can we say that one more time? That was so good.
Yeah.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah.
A little slower.
Sure.
It was so good.
So in the beginning, I thought about it and I thought, you know, I don't want to just create a job for myself. I could find a job anywhere. I want to kind of create a life. And so I think it's important to think about how you can use your business and your skills and everything you're pouring into your new business or your entrepreneurship to try to think about an end goal of how you can create a life for yourself with that.
Yeah. And it's part of
it's that classic like work-life balance.
Yeah.
I think you're kind of saying it's just actually life balance, like work and life.
it serves you.
It's the same. Yeah. Right.
And if it's not serving you anymore, what do you need to do differently?
Yeah. I mean, it's easier said than done. And we all have to make a living and it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy and it's still not. And I'm still trying to figure it out.
Right.
But I also just put a lot of importance on it.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's as important as everything else.
Yeah. So do you think a business like this could be built from nothing in this moment in time? Like if someone was like, hey, I've got some wood. I have access to some wood. I want to create like a custom furniture business. Do you think the model could be replicated and would be successful in today's market?
We'd have to compete with me.
So no.
Yeah, it could. It could. Yeah, I think it could. I mean, anything's possible. I started with nothing. I mean, your drive will go and grit will just take you so far. And I continue to say that. Like, I don't think I'm anything extra special as far as a business person or a woodworker. I just don't quit. And I just keep pushing through hard things and just try to be resilient. So I think those are the things, and those are some of the things I look for in new employees too, but those are some of the things that will get you a really long ways. And I think just about anything's possible.
So I'm curious, you know, you started just yourself and then you scaled. Did you ever take out investment like loans from banks, or did you look for investors, or did you always self-fund?
Just refinancing the house that one time?
Never had an investor. Really didn't do much with any kind of real loan. Probably borrowed a little bit here and there to maybe to get a tool from a family member, a quick, payback, or now we use a line of credit occasionally, but yeah, no big debt or no big loans. And sometimes I wonder if that was the right way to go, because I really struggled through a lot of things, and it probably kept me smaller for longer when I maybe could have missed some opportunity. But on the other hand, it also kept me nimble, and I've been through a few hard times with the recession of 2008 and COVID. And even now it's tricky right now. We're having kind of a tough economy. And so
it's a question we get all the time, of how much, like, I'm starting a business, how much do I need? Right.
Yeah. We've had how much extra.
Right. We've had a previous guest that, looking back, they're like, yeah, we should have gotten more money because we were just that cushion was really helpful.
Yeah.
You said something similar, but I think what I like to focus on though is that, like, you were able to self-fund, and that really helped, especially during the COVID years. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it really did. And that's just part of kind of who I am. Like, I was raised to be that way, kind of frugal, and didn't come from much. And so I think I felt just personally more comfortable with that, but doesn't mean it's the right way for everybody.
Yeah. That's what worked for you.
Yeah. And every business is different too.
Right.
Some require way more capital. I mean, I started so small. I didn't require much to keep the doors open, and kind of built up from there. And that's not possible in every business.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's harder to compete now. Like, when you asked if you could do this now, there's just more competition, and like the internet makes everything available to everyone all the time. And so that makes it harder. Yeah, for sure.
Anything else you want to add before we move into our...
Any other truth bombs you want to lay on us?
I know, that was such a good one.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot. Yeah, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Shall we move into our very favorite lightning round?
That's what I've been looking forward to.
It's our thunder that comes with the lightning. If you need me to spell it out for you. Anyway, all right. We've got 6 questions here. Quick questions, quick answers. Daily habit that helps you stay grounded and focused on what's most important.
Oh, man. Being active and being outdoors and listening to music.
Okay.
And cooking good food.
Okay. What kind of music?
I'm all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it all. It just depends on the mood.
Okay, cool. Sometimes more money, more problems.
That's right.
Okay. Number 2, lesson you've learned from your entrepreneurial journey.
Lesson I've learned. Oh my gosh. I've learned so many. It's hard to narrow it down to one. I think everything is figure-outable. I love that saying.
Figure-outable.
Just dropping bombs.
Yeah.
I've also heard that every problem is a communication problem. So figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll help.
Again, another easier said than done.
Yeah, not easy, but comes down to it a lot of times.
Okay, number 3, misconception people have about running a small business.
Oh, that it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's hard. I've literally bled for the business and put in so many long hours. I've missed school sports and birthdays, and it's hard.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, we sell a lot of stuff. So I think sometimes people think there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of money that comes and goes, but doesn't always end up in my pocket.
Right.
So that's a misconception.
Okay. Looking back, what would you have done differently in your entrepreneurial journey? We've talked about some of this.
I don't think I'd really do anything different. I didn't make all the perfect decisions, but it got me here, and I'm happy here. And so I would I wouldn't change it.
Okay. Second to last question. Advice to other entrepreneurs wanting to start a product-based business.
I'd say just follow your passion. I just finished this book about callings, and they were talking about how you can either follow your callings in life or you can be drugged by them, but you can't really avoid it, or it'll just keep coming back. So I'd say if you're thinking about it, do it. There's never a perfect time. And I think a lot of people wait too much for a perfect time. Doesn't mean it's going to be successful or easy, but I'd say go for it.
All right, last one. What's one thing about woodworking that you think people should know, but they might not?
This is a hard lightning round question.
Is it?
Oh, and the clock's ticking too. So.
I know. Getting nervous. What should they know? That wood moves. Wood moves around seasonally.
It moves.
Yeah, it expands and contracts with the humidity. And so we have to think about that when we're working with it. We can't just lock it all together, especially on these big, wide, solid single pieces. That can be hard to explain sometimes to people that want something very specifically, but we have to tell them it's still a moving, living, natural product.
How long does it take to dry the wood again?
They say as a rule of thumb, it takes 1 year per inch in thickness to air dry. But that, like air dried here in Oregon is not really that dry compared to Santa Fe.
Yeah.
So yeah, we air dry things for generally a couple years and then put it in a kiln for 3 to 5 weeks. Wow. So it's a long process.
It's a super long process.
Yeah, amazing though.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome. It's fun.
Thanks for giving us this tape. No, I'm just
All right. We'll see you next time on The Hurdle. Thanks for joining us today.
We'll see you next time on The Hurdle.